Come on in, you guys. We're getting ready to start Jimmy on Clubhouse. So those of you that are new, this used to be a show called Jimmy Rants. And I found this brand new app called Clubhouse that lets you talk to people in real time. So we're on the Clubhouse format. It is a downloadable app to your phone that you can log into. The only limitations right now to Clubhouse is you have to have an iPhone, and you also have to have an invitation to come on and download it and be a part of the fun that we do over there. So what Jimmy does is, I care about you guys. I want information to get out there. I come on live with you guys here on Instagram. So we call this Jimmy on Clubhouse. So tell people if you want to see what Clubhouse is like. I do these pretty regular interviews. I see my bud, the ketogenic pharmacist, just came on. Brian will be on the show on Saturday. We're going to do a live show, but I need to get this show on the road. We're going to start Jimmy on Clubhouse right now. And here we go. Coming in, guys. We are going to have a wonderful show today. And we're going to see if Dan French will come in here. Dan is a good friend of mine who is a PhD in rhetoric. So, Dan the man, what up, my brother?
Hey, Jimmy.
How are you, man?
Good, man. What's up?
I am well. Guys, this is my friend Dan French. I've known Dan for a little while now, probably about a decade-ish when Paleo was a thing. It's not quite as much of a thing as it used to be, but Dan is one of the most unique people I think I've ever met, Dan. You're fascinating, and I'm attracted to you partly because you're a stand-up comedian, and I absolutely love stand-up comedy. But then you told me, because I was asking about your background, I have a PhD in rhetoric. I was like, what?
What?
Yeah, and so
Where?
And so you call yourself Dr. Dan French because you did earn that degree. But man, rhetoric, and as it relates to diet, you and I were talking. I was like, dude, I got to get you on Keto for the Soul because there's so many people. They need some convincing. They've convinced themselves not to do the habits that they know they need to do. And so you've got a program that you do. Guys, go check out his podcast, Rhetoric Warriors. And at his website, rhetoricwarriors.com, he has a great little program that will teach you the art of rhetoric and persuasion, and most of all, persuasion for yourself. So welcome, Dan.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so guys, you're in Keto for the Soul. This is the Clubhouse room. Go to the very top, click on that little green house, and be sure to subscribe. This is where I camp out. I do a lot of interviews with people that I know in the world of health and other areas, and Dan is going to drop some mad knowledge. If you're having trouble sticking to your diet, if you're having trouble getting motivated, persuading yourself, rather than convincing yourself you're going to fail before you even begin, we're going to talk about that. Stick around because this is going to be really fascinating information. So Dan, let's start right there. Why do people have such a negative mindset where they've already failed before they even take the first step?
Oh, man. I don't know. There's so many ways to approach this. The truth is failure is a massive part of human existence.
Yes.
It's way more popular than success.
It's way more popular.
Failure.
Hold on. What'd you say? It's way more popular than what?
Than success.
Oh, success. Yes.
Success is the anomaly.
That's true.
So, we're kind of a failure species. So I'm not surprised when people feel like, they're going to fail at things. More than likely they are, right?
Yeah, but don't they psych themselves out when they already have a negative mindset? Like, literally, mindset is everything when it comes to persuading yourself about anything. If you go into it with a much more positive mindset, then the likely outcome is going to possibly be positive, as opposed to the inevitable, if you have a negative mindset, is you won't succeed.
Well, that's an interesting perspective, Jimmy. One of the things rhetoric does is it goes in and it kind of explodes accepted perspectives. So for people who don't know, rhetoric is the study of effective messaging. So it's essentially when people highly design messages, how do they do it? And rhetoric studies that human phenomenon of highly designed messaging. And so that concept that you just said about positive mindsets versus negative mindsets, and one is more likely to fail, one is more likely to succeed, that's a claim. That's something that somebody constructed along the way, and people accept it. So what a rhetorician wants to do is go in and ask, is that true? And what does it do for us? What does it keep us from doing? So, let's just sort of look at it to start. Like, is that a true claim? Like, what do you mean by positive mindset?
Okay.
I guess that's the first question.
So I think just from a commonsensical standpoint, if someone says, you know what, I want to go on the keto diet, but I know it's not going to work. Oh my gosh, yeah, all these other people have success, but I'm not going to be successful at it. Therefore, I'm just going to give it a go, but I really don't think anything's going to happen. How is that person setting themselves up to be successful in that mindset?
It depends. Like with negativity, there are people that have a negative orientation. There are cultures that have a negative orientation.
Yes.
Towards almost anything. Like my father was a contrarian. A lot of Americans are contrarians. That they contradict whatever's said, and that's just their orientation.
You're one of those, Dan. You're one of those, Dan.
I don't think I am. I don't think I'm a contrarian, as I, contrary what you just said.
Yes.
I'm trained to rhetoric. So rhetoric never accepts any definition.
Okay.
Okay. So like you wanted to use some words there. It doesn't accept the fact that you get to set the words. It doesn't accept that you get to find the words. It doesn't accept that something's true. That's the nature of that industry, of that activity. It's
right.
what rhetoric does. And so a lot of times when you're talking to me, you're getting my rhetorician self, because that's what you're asking me for.
Yeah.
I think naturally I'm a contrarian. I like positivity. I like optimism. I like energy in teams and creativity. So you can't do creativity and be negative.
Right. Well, it gets to the point of what I'm talking about here, that we have a whole group of people that are on Clubhouse here, and they're trying to learn about diet. And a lot of them, as I hear them speaking, I'm in rooms, I hear them, oh my gosh, I've only lost 2 pounds in the last week, and I'm so upset, and blah, blah, blah. So they're kind of like devaluing maybe the good that could be happening, that is setting them up for failure if they stay down that road of persuading themselves through their own internal rhetoric that they're not doing a good thing.
Yeah, but you're setting up as optimism as an antidote, right?
It should be.
Well, I mean, that's a claim. Is that an effective strategy? Is that an effective self-persuasion?
You tell me,
strategy?
Is it an effective strategy based on your own expertise as a rhetorician?
So I'm going to give you 3 techniques, and we're just going to do them over and over again.
Yeah, go.
1 is your word choice, okay? 2 is defining those words, and 3 is it true? So those are 3 really primary rhetorical principles.
And
word
this
choice,
is
definition, and truth.
And this is something people who feel like they're going to fail should ask themselves before they proceed with that thinking.
They're just really useful ways of taking things apart to figure out whether it's going to work for you or not. So this idea of optimism as antidote, or optimism as lead dog, right? You hear this a lot, especially in American culture. It's very strong in American culture throughout history, of this idea that we are a successful people. We are exceptional. We, conquered an entire continent and keep moving forward and progressing into the future. Those are all optimistic principles in American culture, and everybody recognizes them, right?
Yep.
You've used these throughout your life, and then you start applying to them, not just to the culture, but to individuals. So suddenly, you're defined as, can I stay optimistic? That's a successful strategy for an American, is an optimistic person, doesn't get bogged down in negativity and all that kind of talk. And so you go to the third thing, ask yourself, I'll give you the fourth one. Is this good for people? Is this an effective strategy? So it doesn't really particularly seem to be an effective strategy. You hear a lot of people throwing around, you need to stay positive and optimistic. The question is that an effective strategy for people on something like, keto diet, which is basically an elimination diet?
Right.
Get rid of these foods, focus on these foods. So is optimism useful or not? Let's actually look at that would be the question.
Okay.
Has it helped you, Jimmy? Like optimism, does optimism help you every day to control your eating so that it's keto?
Well, I know for me, I'm a generally positive person just by nature. That's just the nature of the beast of being someone, I guess, who is out there in front of people. People don't want to hear a drab person. So I stay pretty optimistic, maybe by default now, that, yeah, I would say that it helps me stay on the straight and narrow.
Is it a true optimism or is it a faux optimism? Like, in other words, is it constructed and artificial and you just hold on to it regardless? Or have you earned that based on your activity and, sort of who you are and that kind of stuff?
Oh, I think both of those feed into one another. That you might kind of fake it till you make it to start, but then it becomes so a part of you that you keep it up.
I know a lot of people who I would say are faux optimistic.
Okay.
They hold on to it. They're very positive, and they hold on to it. And I find it, to be pretty surface.
And you can see it, right?
Yeah, almost instantly.
What are the signs?
I mean, can't you tell when somebody?
Oh yeah. Oh dude.
Superficially positive.
My BS meter is so high on those people. It's not even funny.
But they're holding on to the same principle, the idea of optimism.
Yes.
Being, a powerful, a help. It's powerfully. It's a help to you be successful, and people are under pressure to hold on to that optimism.
So what's the answer then? Because people have heard, okay, optimism and positivity isn't necessarily kind of going to roll you into that locating your diet failure. How do you persuade yourself? Obviously, a negative mindset won't, or will it? Let me ask that. I suppose there are some people who would be motivated and persuaded by negative. If someone called them a fat ass every day, maybe that motivates them to go and try to do something about it?
Yeah, there's absolutely a lot of motivational power and negativity. And everybody knows it. Everybody has doesn't matter how positive you are or optimistic you are, you still have a reserve of negativity. You can't avoid it. And you may, whistle past the graveyard of your negativity and try not to look at it, try to repress it or keep it from, getting into your diet and into your self-image and all that kind of stuff. But it's there. And so the question is, is that a good human policy to just try to ignore it and repress it? Or do you go and explore it and see what value is in there so that you can turn it into something, again, that is goal-directed and helps you to stay on a keto diet?
Yeah, Laura over.
So maybe that's a better way of doing it. Like every day you start by, exploring 5 or 10 minutes of meditation about your negatives.
Interesting. Laura over on Instagram said, nope. Negativity would not work for me. And I think it also depends on your personality type. And if you guys are listening, yourself, what kind of gets you going and what pushes you in the direction of being persuaded. And quite frankly, Dan, there's a certain segment that do very well, unfortunately, I think, with negative reinforcement. And then there's other people that need that positivity and encouragement. And then you got a big group in the middle that doesn't know what they are, or they're back and forth.
Yeah, most people don't do what, my approach to this is what I call highly constructed self-persuasion. And this is the difference in getting trained as a rhetorician and kind of doing your life sort of as a normal person.
Yes.
Rhetoricians want to go in and construct everything to optimize it. And so when you're doing highly constructed self-persuasion, you look at the whole system and you go, okay, well, what works for me? What works against me? And you try to dwindle the things that are working against you and amplify the things that are working for you. And there are a lot of people that are strongly motivated by negativity. If you listen to a lot of athletes, like super athletes, Michael Jordan types, Tiger Wood types, they're incredibly motivated to work insanely hard because they fear failure.
Yes.
Or somebody has pushed them and given them this horrible, internal negativity that they have to fight by winning.
I think people want success handed to them on a silver platter. And maybe that expectation of success will just come if I just start. And as you alluded to with Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan, that documentary on him last year was fascinating because now you know why they won 6 championships in the 90s. Dude was not going to let them fail. He literally willed them to that. But that only takes you just so far.
Well, it took him to 6 world championships.
Well, for him it worked. But I'm saying for most people, they will themselves to go on the diet. It's why so many of us, you included, Dan. By the way, Dan lost triple-digit weight eating a paleo diet about a decade ago and was able to get his health back. That's how he and I connected. But yeah, people can be motivated to want to get started, and they get started, but then it fizzles out because something happens in there.
It depends. Like if you want to take an approach, I'll put it this way, Jimmy. Any approach can work. Doesn't matter whether it's positivity, whether it's minding your negativity, whether it's some kind of mix of that stuff. Any motivational persuasion structure can work. It just depends on how well you construct it and does it fit for you.
Yeah.
And there are people, Michael Jordan, go back to the original principles of choose your words and define them. Was he successful?
Yes.
Well, he won a lot of basketball games. Watching that documentary, he doesn't always come across as a very successful human being.
And likable. He wasn't very likable in that documentary either.
Well, and that was the first time they really showed his unlikableness. Like, the media treated him very well.
Oh, yeah.
So he was very successful with the media. He's very financially successful.
Want to be like Mike,
He's
yep.
incredibly successful, as a basketball player. But does he look like a happy person? If we're looking at happiness as his success factor, if that's our definition of success, then I don't know,
Well, he made a lot of money. He became a billionaire because of his basketball and business prowess.
Yeah, but if he wins these 4 things, finances, basketball, fame, good at media, and loses happiness, is he a successful person?
I guess that's subjective at that point.
Well, yeah. Well, what do you think?
That's up to Michael Jordan.
Happy as a human being, but he's got all these things.
Actually, that's up to Michael Jordan as to how he defines success. I define success for myself not in things, but in relationships and in my happiness and internal peace.
Right. So you could fail at keto, you could fail at diet, you could fail at that particular goal, and as long as you're happy and you have good relationships, and you still consider yourself a success.
I would say so, yes, but I also want those other things, but they're not going to make or break my psyche if I don't happen to make them successful.
Well, I think a lot of people will find, in modern cultures, especially modern, if you look at modernity ideas for cultures, is that we live very tangled lives, and all these different strands of things that could be success or failures, they get intertwined. And we have to untangle them if you're going to start talking about failure and success. Diet is really hard because health is actually, 15, 20, 25 different things in there that are success or failure strands.
Yes. Yeah.
So there's how much fat is on your body, right? Is that the success metric?
Not for me. Success for me, especially on a ketogenic diet, is energy, brain health, ability to feel satisfied for many hours between meals. There's a lot of little, like you said, kind of subjective things that you don't really think about when the obsession tends to be what a machine measuring your gravity has to say about how well you're doing.
Yeah, but the culture will still, it has its success metrics. Like you get to try to set your own success metrics.
Yep.
And hold them in place. But the culture in general has success metrics.
Yes.
People in your relationships, people in organizations, they all have different success metrics. So which one are you going to use? I think some people, like I remember my mom years ago, my sister went Atkins, and both of them lost a bunch of weight. And I remember looking at them going, because it was the first time in their life that they really were able to control their weight, but they looked weird to me. Like I'd known them for their whole lives, and they'd lost weight very quickly on Atkins by switching, essentially to the early keto plan.
Yep.
And it had kind of withered them. Like neither one of them worked out, so they didn't look good. They had less fat on their body for sure, but I would not have said that they won the game because their appearance was not, I think, what they wanted. So is it fat retention? Is it appearance? Who gets to define this?
I think the individual defines it, right?
No, not particularly.
I mean, society will always define you. Trust me. I've been online 17 years as a diet and health advocate. I have been judged up, down, and in between by other people's expectations of what I should be in my health journey compared to what Jimmy wants to have as his goal in his health journey.
So do you want to judge your own health journey? Do you think everybody should be able to do that?
Yeah, I think everybody should judge their own health journey, and it's nobody else's business. This is just my opinion, and I know you're going to rhetoricize what I say here, but because I know you well, my brother. But I feel like each person's journey is their journey, and it's nobody else's business what the hell you choose to do with that.
So do you want to explore the idea?
Yeah, let's go.
So is that true? Okay, those three words resound in rhetoric. Is that true? So yes, the individual, we love the individual in America. They have some primacy, they have some power. We want to valorize that idea of you get to define yourself, right?
Yep.
So how do you feel about people who are, incredibly unhealthy, never get their act together, get sicker and sicker and sicker, and we all pay for their insurance?
Okay, that's a choice they make that could impact me. I see where you're going with that, but I think still, at the end of the day, people's individual choices should be on them. Now, this is a philosophical thing for me, and it's just a belief system that I have. You're now making me want to ask those questions of why I believe that. Is it true? All the things. But yeah, I still, at the end of the day, individual choice matters. But see, this is where something else comes into this discussion. It's fascinating, by the way, Dan. That's why I'm glad I had you on today. Guys, if you haven't noticed, we're a little deeper than we normally go on some of these interviews I do, and it's one reason I wanted Dan on today. We are in the Keto for the Soul room here on Clubhouse. Click on that green box at the top. We're also simulcasting over on the Jimmy on Clubhouse Instagram page. So thank you all for being here today, talking to Dr. Dan French. And he is a rhetorician, and he's helping us with this idea of locating your diet failure and the art of self-persuasion. But yeah, I just feel like, Dan, that at the end of the day, my choices are my choices. And if you start to take away my choice, who's to say that there would be someone else who would tell me, no, you cannot eat meat anymore? And they're actually trying to do that right now, it seems like. Why would that be okay under the guise of, well, we know this will make you healthier?
Well, are you slippery sloping me?
You can unslip it if you want to break it down for me. I
think, arguing that the future dystopian outcome of something right now is a little tricky.
Okay.
So this idea that, in the future, nobody's going to be allowed to eat meat is a dystopian idea. Not that it couldn't happen. It could clearly happen.
It is a stated goal of some of the vegan burger kind of companies. They've even stated as much. The Impossible Food CEO even said by 2035, we want to eliminate all meat from the planet and have people eating plant-based burgers.
Yeah. I mean, that's the cool thing about human beings, that any future is possible. We can literally do whatever we want. We can reprogram everything if we want,
Yeah.
Versus the idea that everything is set and we've always done it this way and we're not going to change it. So you can look at that stuff. The problem with slippery sloping is that, you sort of look at what you're doing in the present.
Yeah.
And you're using a future argument to try to justify the present.
And that's prudent to do on an individual basis, right? You want to look into the future. Will keto work for me if I start doing this plan? And then what happens if it doesn't work for me? That's kind of the crux of what we're talking about here today. You kind of want people to be in that mindset of looking forward while living in the present.
Yeah, rhetoric, keto and a lot of these things, they basically are trying to do that sort of what I call a binary of now and future. So what I'm doing now is this, but this is the future that I want. I have a hypothetical future that I want to create. And I believe that if I do these things in the present, it will get me to that hypothetical future. So we're always fighting. We're always in that continuum as human beings because we can project the future, right? And we can control the present somewhat. So it's great. It's a great offer. It sounds great, but it's also incredibly challenging to control the present and to actually get to the future that you want.
Yeah.
Most people fail at almost every single thing they try. Let's start with that as a primary principle.
Okay.
Everything, like across the board.
And it's probably true at some point, anything that you begin.
95% failure.
Yeah. And it's probably true. Well, and that's the statistic that is usually thrown out, that if you lose weight on any diet, 95% of the people will gain all the weight back.
Yeah, and why is that, Jimmy? What's your explanation for that?
My explanation is they get frustrated at some point because their reason, their persuasion wasn't effective enough to make them do it for longer than just willing themselves to whatever success that they did have.
Well, this goes back to the idea of highly constructed self-persuasion. The whole offer of rhetoric is that the more sophisticated you get with your persuasion, the more effective it is. And that's your goal, right? You want to do stuff in the present that's going to work so that you can get to the future that you want. And we're not very sophisticated in our persuasion. Like, even the idea of being highly positive seems strong to people. Like, yes, if I can just stay positive, that's going to get me to the future because it's going to control me right now. That is a very familiar persuasion theory. And I keep bringing you back to, is it true? Apparently it's not, because people fail still 95% of the time.
So if it's not true, what is true?
Well, I don't know, let's start looking around the other options. Like the one that I suggested earlier, be more effective. And I'm not saying I have the answer to this.
Yeah.
I'm investigating it, but maybe you'd be better off, instead of repressing your negativity, and trying to just over-amplify your positivity, maybe you'd be better off with a different approach.
Balanced?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe balanced, maybe 95% negative.
I think it's going to be...
Let's ask that question. Would that work?
Well, I don't think universally anything's going to work across the board. I think you're going to, just like a diet, you kind of need to tailor this to your own personality, your own like self-realized ways of motivating yourself and persuading yourself. I don't think it's going to be the same for Dan French as it is for Jimmy Moore.
Yeah, clearly not. I mean, human beings are incredibly subjective. We're all complex. Things are going to work somewhat. Things are not going to work somewhat. But let's just take that one. And since I'm talking to you, unless somebody else wants to jump in here.
Oh, yeah, we're going to bring people up in a minute. Go ahead and hit the hand button, you guys. Raise your hand if you want to talk to Dan.
Other people, because you need to take this set of principles and you need to figure out how they apply to you so that you can be successful. And you're giving me, and you launched this with a really strong set of persuasion principles along the idea of positivity.
Yes, because that's what people believe.
Superpower in keto and in health and things like that. We have to stay positive. But I hear that a lot, and I still see massive failure. So I'm now like looking at it going, that doesn't seem to work.
So what breaks down if positivity isn't the answer? I think positivity is a good fuel to start the persuading yourself to get going. What sustains it? What is that long-lasting fuel that keeps him going?
Well, there are a lot of different, we haven't pulled up other ones other than, positivity and negativity right now to get started. But the idea, I'm not saying that positivity doesn't have uses. What I'm saying is when you look at this, you have a whole list of options. Like there's a menu of ways to persuade yourself. And you're pulling out positivity and you're putting it in front of me and you're like, that's what I think people need. And I'm like, okay, so let's either figure out how to do that really well, or if it doesn't work, then let's figure out what it needs, what adjustments it needs to make it work.
To tweak it, right?
So if we're going positivity and you're like, I want to amplify that. You clearly believe in it, Jimmy.
I do for me only because I've seen, I do for me, Dan, because I've seen it in myself, has been helpful for me, and it keeps my mindset right for that. I don't do well in a negative mindset.
Ever? Like, you never have negativity?
negative actions are thrust on everybody. And so, I mean, I suppose, and I've had negative stuff happen in my life, traumatic things, as a kid and things like that I think did shape me into who I am. So I'm not saying there's no persuasive value in the negativity. I just know that Jimmy Moore thrives more in that positivity. But I hear what you're saying. Like, that's kind of a common notion out there in our culture of just stay positive. In fact, when this pandemic started last year, oh, everybody just stay positive and keep your spirits high. And I'm like, I think some people want to feel a little depressed because this is depressing.
Yeah, and again, if you go into other theoretical approaches, psychotherapy, the last thing they want you to do is stay positive because you never work your way through your negatives.
Right.
Which means you're always carrying that stuff around, and it's always defeating you in this kind of background way that you're just acting like it isn't there.
Yeah.
So your advice to just do everything you can to stay positive would actually, within that theory set of psychoanalysis, be an incredibly defeating, failure-rich approach.
Yeah, and I'm not recommending it. I'm just stating that is my core principle of how I live my life. I think people should figure out how to best persuade themselves, which is why I wanted you on here today. I feel like there are a lot of different strategies, and we've definitely heavily focused on the positive and the negative. What are some of those other things?
Well, just this is what I do. Like, if you just take one of the subsets within rhetoric is rationality. Like trying to lay everything out logically into its parts so that you can work on each piece of it. And you see this a lot in health. Health is incredibly complicated. You're dealing with, the body, and you're dealing with advertising, and you're dealing with all these different things that it requires so many different expertises that rationality kind of breaks down. So even your idea of keto, and you've said a couple of times paleo, has fallen out of favor, and that it's not what it used to be, and that I used paleo to lose 125 pounds. All that stuff is, if you look at it logically and you start asking, is that true? Is paleo better than keto? And you have all this argument according to diet approaches, eating approaches.
Yeah.
And it gets super complicated, and nobody knows the answer.
Which is why
Tell me, why is keto? You tell me, Jimmy. Just give me 2 quick reasons why keto is better than paleo.
It's not. That's my answer.
So why is everybody yelling keto now instead of
paleo?
It's
food trends. I think paleo is a good diet for specific people. I think keto is a good diet for specific people. Hell, I even think a vegan diet is probably a good diet for certain people. So like this is in this idea of diet, like not having a dogmatic approach about it. And like a lot of the things that I say now, Dan, is just kind of figure out what works for you. I've never been a fan of this is the diet that everybody in the world should ever go on and never go off of ever again. That there is no such diet.
Yeah, but there's diets that you consider to be bad, right?
I have diets that would be less than perfect for Jimmy Moore. I do believe that.
So what you're doing to me right now is you're escaping into individualism in order to...
I'm a highly individual guy. I'm a highly individual guy, Dan. Are you trying to get me to talk collectively?
You're doing it as a dodge because you're a public figure.
Okay, but I'm not dodging. Ask the question directly. Ask the question directly. Say it again.
Tell me a bad diet. What is a bad, evil, villainous, don't ever do that diet, Jimmy?
I think anything that has ultra-processed foods as its primary source of calories is an incredibly bad diet. How about that?
Okay, so like when I do my, you've heard my, at least pieces of my one-person stand-up.
I've heard it all, yes.
25 pounds. One of the things I say is like I give people principles that I use to lose a lot of weight, and the first one is I don't eat anything made by an American company.
You want those Chinese protein bars, huh?
I don't eat anything made by, I can say, capitalist entity.
Yes.
I don't eat anything made by a corporation.
Okay, fair enough.
Because processed food makes people fat.
Yes. So you agree with me on that rhetoric. So you agree with me on that rhetoric.
A series of claims that I like to throw in. I do it partially because they're funny, and partially because they're true in my experience. And they're activating. When you hear people say that, it's like a really strong statement. And as a public figure and the type of things I do, really strong statements are great. Like I literally will tell people like that food makes people fat no matter where you take it. Like you can drop American food, corporate processed food in the middle of the Sudan, and come back 2 years later and they're all going to be big belly rednecks.
Yep.
Yeah. They're going to be like, I don't know what that food is, but man, that is good stuff right there. Welcome to the Pizza Hut.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I think
that's a concept. So you found a villain, right?
And I think that's a common villain of all of these diets we've been talking about: paleo, keto, even carnivore, vegan. They all oppose processed foods.
Sure, that became one of the villains of alternative eating theories.
Yep.
What does that villain think about all that?
Well, they're losing money if those of us that push that out there convince other people and persuade them that it's true.
Yeah, but you're not winning at all. Like you're not winning against processed food. Processed food is
massively
dominating you.
I am on an individual basis and in my sphere of influence of people that listen to me.
Yeah, that's tiny. Like compare your failure.
Fair enough, but
to their success.
But that's why I'm trying to replicate Jimmy Moore's galore, because eventually they will come down.
Will they?
If I have anything to say about it. If I have anything to say about it.
Well, I'm trying to teach you how to bring them down, Jimmy.
Okay, let's go. Tell me all your secrets.
Well, it's like this idea of making them villains. It's really hard to make them villains. We in the alternative health communities, everybody has accepted that they're villains. But how did you get there? Like you're just being told they're villains, or you doing science?
No.
How are you finding this?
Little diabetes made me get bigger. McDonald's with their stupid Monopoly game, making me go to the drive-through 3-4 times a day. Like I have memories of all of these things, and no, they didn't force me to eat their food, but it was highly palatable, and it kind of led me down this path of, holy crap, look at all the activities that I did, all under the guise of this feels good, I want to do it in the moment. So that it's easy for me to make them a villain.
Yeah, so let's look what they do rhetorically. They have a super advantage on keto and all the alternative health foods. Like, what is their super advantage?
They have money and marketing budgets.
That's not really their super advantage. That's one of their advantages for sure.
They also have availability. Availability, they're everywhere.
Distribution, definitely an advantage. But their super advantage is that they have hijacked and hacked into taste.
Yes.
Pleasure.
Yes.
That's their super advantage. They go right to the internal workings of the human mind, and they hit it with cocaine-like experiences.
Yep. Whew, man, this is
a super advantage. That's awesome. What a great advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, and they've gotten very good at it, hiring food scientists to make those foods.
Oh my God, they're the best. I mean, yeah, you're not. So here's the point: you're not going to beat them.
On an individual basis, I can beat them, but you're saying collectively that's not big enough to do anything. I'm saying that over time, people will wake up just like I did, just like Judith did, just like Erica did, like a lot of people in this room. We woke up, we wanted better for ourselves, and that's why we make the better choices that we do now.
Yeah, and that's a nice, again, hypothetical projection into the future. As a rhetorician, I would say you're following a flawed path.
Okay.
Like this idea of waking up and seeing them as villains and recognizing what the food does to you as your predominant way of getting people onto this other way of eating. I understand that. I've seen a ton of it in health, in alternative health, and it's effective for a certain amount of people, but it's still a tiny, tiny percentage of the population.
Right. So what's the better way to look at them as?
Well, what I always say is start with looking at what's working. So look around, like the American corporation has figured out how to get people to eat. right?
Mm-hmm.
They are very good at getting people to eat their products. So I don't know if you remember this years ago. I don't know if you were at the panel or not. When I was at Paleo FX, I put together a panel on exactly this. Like, how do you win, with the majority of the population against, how do you persuade people to follow the paleo diet? And I was trying to give people more sophisticated approaches to doing that. And they put, like, I started the panel, but then they jammed a bunch of people on there with me.
Yep.
Who were psychologists.
I remember that. Yes.
3 of them were from Harvard.
Yes.
So they went down the line of introducing themselves and giving their credentials. They were wonderful people. I'm still friends with a couple of them. But they got to me, and I'm like, well, here's the thing. It's great that everybody's up here, but none of these people belong on this stage.
Right.
This is about rhetoric. This is about persuasion. It's not about therapy. It's not about psychoanalysis. And look around. American corporations have figured out how to win the food game. We should, instead of this idea of selling health, you should be selling pleasure, like they do. So look at Hooters. Hooters figured out how to sell cheap wings, by having sex, sports, and alcohol.
Sure.
So Paleo, instead of having these health food places and all this, rhetoric of medical advantages and all that kind of stuff, should open up, their own version of Hooters.
All right, ladies, a bacon form of Hooters.
It should be. I was going to call it Rumps.
Rumps. Okay. Yes. See, you guys are getting the stand-up comedy value of Dan now. So.
Well, creativity and comedy will find solutions to
yes.
things that other people don't.
That's true.
You may not be able to use that particular thing, but the idea is correct. Use all the super selling techniques of American corporations, but put better food in there, and you'd probably be fine. That would be a much more effective technique than this idea of what you're pushing of, hey, these people are villains, wake up.
Well, let's be clear. I'm not pushing anything other than on an individual basis, but you're definitely giving me ideas for pushing collectively to an audience. So thank you for doing that, Dan. Guys, we're going to open up the room. Please raise your hand if you want to be a part of this discussion. Dan is a very interesting guy. I love he is contrarian back to me using his rhetorician hat today. Love this guy to death. He has a lot of really cool ideas. So click on the hand. We'll bring you into the room like Erica. Erica, we're coming to you first. This is Keto for the Soul. Click on that little green box at the top, the little house up there, and it will let you subscribe. And please subscribe and hit the bell so you see all of the notifications whenever anybody goes live in Keto for the Soul. I am simulcasting over here on Instagram. I have an all-new Jimmy on Clubhouse page over on Instagram. Lots of comments over here for you, Dan, on Instagram. Let me read some of these. Becky said, gratitude and affirmations along with spiritual work has helped me stay on the positive track for my own journey. So there's her. And again, that's an individual basis of what works for her. Laura says, your success is very personal no matter what. That's her perspective as well. Society is always going to be judgmental. I agree it should be the person that is the temple of their body and their health, which I know you pushed back on a moment ago. Let's see. Still scrolling. Hang with me. Becky says, do what works best for you. That's a common phrase out there. I would love for you to break down here in a minute. Dan, as more people become advocates for whole food lifestyles, no matter what, keto, paleo, or carnivore, it's going to have an impact eventually on these big food companies. So before we get to Erica, any comments on any of those?
Well, one of the things that I want to reiterate, Jimmy, is the contrarianness of rhetoric is really, it has a moral foundation.
Yep.
It's the idea of helping you to effectively get what you want.
Yep.
That's all rhetoric is. It's like, hey, I want something. It's like, great, I'm going to help you get that. So if you want to spread this idea of keto as a health theory and you believe in it and you want other people to adhere to it, I'm just here to help you sort of look at where are your flawed ideas that aren't going to get you there, where are your strong ideas that will help you get there. And that's the whole purpose. So when I look at it and go, okay, is that right? Like you settled on a claim of the individual, you keep hitting new. And I'm like, okay, is that powerful enough to overcome this massive machinery of processed food in the world that is dominating. And I would always claim that, yeah, it has some power for sure. And if it's working for you, lovely, stay with it. But as a rhetorician, I'm like, hey, there are a lot of other options. Let's pull these up and see if these will help, maybe even better than what you're doing right now.
So besides the rumps idea, what are some other ideas? And Erica, I promise we're coming to you next. Guys, click on the hand at the bottom. Please let Dan hear from you. What you got? Ideas, Dan?
Well, individualism, let's just take that. Like, everybody wants to, locate the power of the individual. And you keep coming back to this. And as public figures, what's happened now is that you get in trouble if you speak collectively, if you make dogmatic statements.
I don't speak for other people. That's why.
But that's a dodge. You do speak for other people.
Okay,
you want to speak for other people, and you want to be a collective leader.
Yeah, I'm
you
a rugged.
Don't want to come out and say it because it becomes a problem now in our culture.
Well, I'm a rugged individualist, and if I had people that were like-minded, I would have no trouble speaking for the collective because I have a voice and I don't mind using it. What I don't like is assuming that everyone falls under the same camp of when I say keto, it's the exact same kind of keto that I do, which is why I make that distinction.
Yeah, and that idea of individualism versus collectivism, right? Those are, again, very powerful ideas for human beings. And we keep going back and hiding under individualism when really what's causing us problems, it's not the individual, it's the collective. This collectivism, these huge organizations, these huge institutions are the thing that are causing the individual the problems. Like, everybody's trying to use individual power to fight this massive collectivity that has, like you said earlier, money, media, pleasure, science, has all this stuff. And you're like, well, why can't the individual win? Well, you have this tiny speck going against this massive machinery that's more powerful persuasively than anything in all of human history. And you keep looking at the individual and go, how come you can't win? Well, how about we tone down some of the collective power so that the individual doesn't have to fight so much against that massive storm of persuasion?
And you do that how?
I don't know. You pass laws and you don't let them name themselves.
Give me an example of that one.
Oh, look at candy. Look how sweet candy is in its naming. Runts and nerds.
Or sugar Snickers. Pie, honey bun.
All that stuff. It's like, it sounds like, the greatest thing in the world, but in reality, it's just pure sugar that's rotting your teeth and, hitting your blood sugar and all this stuff.
So truth in advertising.
Fatalisms or, deathies.
Yes.
Rotters.
So truth in advertising, you think would help fix some of this?
No, get rid of truth. Get rid of this concept that we get to truth. Just don't let them name themselves. Let their enemies name them. And we can handicap them.
Like little diabetes instead of little Debbie.
Sure. I have a joke about how I used to, when the Girl Scouts would sell cookies outside of Walgreens or Walmart, I would set up a table next to them and I would sell insulin and diabetic socks.
Yes.
Because you're trying to, if you let them persuade, without any hindrance, they're going to make themselves seem like this sweet, cool, hyper happy entity when they're actually dangerous. So we need to put the danger back into that food. There's a rhetorical approach.
Absolutely. Well, let's get to the wonderful people up on stage. Erica and Vaughn have stepped up. So Erica and Triple J just came on. Erica, you're up first, my dear. What you got for us?
Hello. Good morning, Jimmy and Dan. First of all, this conversation is everything. I love a great topic, and this is popping. The art of self-persuasion is amazing. And Dan brought up a couple great questions. And I personally think, and again, this is going back to this individuality, I personally think anything that you embark on, that you dedicate and commit yourself to, you will be successful. So when he was saying, well, what diet is a bad diet, or what diet is a good diet, or so on and so forth, I personally tried paleo. I did start losing some weight on paleo, but my problem with paleo and some of the fruits that I was having, I continued to have carb cravings.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Erica, and I'm a recovering carb addict. Paleo was delicious and great, but it wasn't helping my carb issue. Keto still allowed me to eat because I like to eat. But reducing that those carbs is what helped me to be, personally, I believe, successful, because I was able to cut back on those carbs. So 100 pounds later on keto, when I thought I had to have gastric bypass, I didn't have to have gastric. I had keto and it worked for me. And I think that anything that you commit to, if you change your attitude and your actions and your behaviors, I had to learn it wasn't the little Debbie that was the devil. It was me. I didn't have to eat the little Debbie. You know what I mean? I was binging and overeating, and I had to change my personal behaviors and my action and my attitude around food to win.
Dan?
Yeah, I think, like I said, individualistic rhetoric is really strong in America. If you can do it, great. I'm all for the powerful individual. You know, it's hard for people. I think, you get so many things that detract it. You start to get stressed, you start to get work, you get travel, you get all these things that attack your individual power. And, it's tough. It's a tough theory to stay with. But I love it when people succeed with it. I'm a fan of the individual like anybody else that's grown up in America. So, yeah, more power to you.
So, Dan, if trying to do it from a collective standpoint, would it take someone of celebrity status to have kind of that appeal to authority? What's the rhetoric called when you have a leader? Ethos, is that what you called it?
Yeah, ethos is character-driven. Rhetoric.
Yes. So it would be somebody famous that they look up to. Just throw a name out there. LeBron James, for example, if he came out and said, guys, you've got to do this keto thing. It's going to make you healthy and fit, and it's kind of helped me extend my career. Like, would that be powerful collective rhetoric that could be used to self-persuade and maybe make a pretty big shift?
Yeah, I mean, any type of leader or, fame holding individual that comes out in favor of something has power. That's why those guys get paid, hundreds of millions of dollars
to
endorse things. So within, American collectives, those things have superpower. Would it be enough? Could it, like, how many of those people do you need? You see, their credibility gets diluted because it gets extended into so many areas. Like, almost all super sports figures like that eventually, especially, will get pulled over into some type of political issues.
Yeah.
Especially like with Black Lives Matter and with LeBron, and they did a collective of four very famous NBA athletes, and they came out and made statements about it, things like that. And now suddenly they're over into an area where they're not experts, they're not celebrities, they're not, they're really not qualified to go over and talk in politics, but they're using their credibility from sports, and typically also as human beings, to come over and try to do stuff there. Well, then if you take them over to keto, and then if you take them over here, they suddenly, it gets diluted.
Yes.
What I would say is keto. Like, who is the celebrity that's pushing keto right now? Who's the face of keto?
I mean, there's really not any. No, I mean, I guess the Kim Kardashian was one of the bigger names, I suppose, from a celebrity standpoint that first started talking about it. Halle Berry would be another one who uses it to control her type 1 diabetes. I'm trying to think of famous people that would be big enough names that could make an impact.
Yeah, I don't know any. I don't know anybody that's associated with keto. I mean, paleo. I think, didn't Matthew McConaughey come out at one point as some kind of paleo a little bit?
All right. I don't know.
I got into alternative health through Bill Clinton, because it was through the John McDougal thing that Clinton, had gone hardcore vegan and like no fat vegan, essentially. And I was like, that is weird. I remember watching it as a news story because Clinton can easily get into the media. And I'm like, that is a very odd way of eating. I wonder if I could do that. Like, I just took it on just as this weird challenge because I'd never been able to get outside of processed food eating. And I wasn't a horrible eater. I was not a fast food person, but, like Erica was saying, carbs and, it's so easy to put on and keep on weight in American culture. And so I looked at this, I'm like, I'm going to give it a shot. And I ate like that essentially for 6 months, and it changed everything. I didn't like eating like that, so I jumped over to paleo. But it was that was my pathway into alternative eating.
Yeah.
It was clean.
Erica, thank you for your question. And Vaughn, you're up next. What you got for us?
Good morning, brother. How are you? How are you, Dan? I appreciate you having me.
Hey.
I think it's a very interesting conversation because what I think it does, I think it opens up the mind. It opens up the mind to look at things from a different angle and a different perspective. It's very interesting, how could we use the art of persuasion, of self-persuasion, like you guys say here in the title, to overcome some of our resistances.
Dan?
Some of your resistances, like you want specific tactics, is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, just kind of expand upon, like, if I, in life, you have to overcome to become. So we all have battles, right? And sometimes I think we need to look at what we call storms as, a little bit from a different angle, right? So if I'm going through something, just say addiction, for instance. So if somebody's going to do with an addiction, carbs, whatever, drugs, alcohol, how can we bring this topic in to making a shift?
Yeah, I think, that's a great example. Like in the addiction community, they have found rhetorical strategies, persuasion strategies that actually come from 70s and earlier holistic group therapy. They've found these sort of tactics that they don't know exactly why they work, but they tend to work for some people. So like group meetings, like go into meetings in, public groups and listen to stories, and speaking at group meetings is a type of persuasion. It's a type of, group social persuasion that has a lot of power for a lot of people. And you saw this like in the 70s. My mom used to go to Tops and to Weight Watchers.
Oh yeah, mine too.
It does it's the same thing. It's rescuing group psychology, which is very specific tactics. If you put human beings into groups, usually fairly small groups, 20, 30 people, and they get known so that they have an identity there. They're part of a little community. You do little speakers, like give information. You give behavioral control about what we're looking for. You give measurements. These are all very specific tactics. And addiction, like 12-step programs and AA and all those kind of organizations, they harvest from those principles. They add in things like spiritualism, sort of giving your life to a higher power, which is incredibly powerful persuasion. Clearly, 2.5 billion people on the planet are Christians for a reason. It's a very powerful persuasion. So those kind of tactics can be really helpful, and what I talk about with highly constructed self-persuasion is go, okay, this stuff helps. So maybe some spiritualism with my keto. Do you do any of that, Jimmy? Do you have any spiritualism built into your keto?
Oh, I know Vaughn does, but yeah, obviously there are a lot of biblical principles I apply to my personal keto. I don't expect other people to abide by it because I don't assume they're Christian. But for me, yeah, like I'm honoring the temple of God by the foods that I eat. I don't desecrate his temple by putting things in my mouth that would then destroy this temple that he's given me. So yeah, I do that.
Yeah, and spiritualism is a very powerful way to control human behavior. So, you're using it tactically and applying it to keto. I don't hear that a lot about when keto talks about itself, that we are a spiritual practice.
Because it's not.
You go into things like, but it is. You're clearly applying it to there.
It is to me and everyone that would identify as a Christian who wants to apply it in that way. But an atheist wouldn't connect with that message and that rhetoric about keto because it wouldn't apply to them.
Yeah, and that's what I said. Like, everybody designs their own persuasion. So if I'm not particularly spiritual or mystical or religious, then I probably won't use that approach.
Right.
But
Vaughn calls it.
I would bet a lot of people do.
Vaughn calls himself Keto Jesus, so I'm sure he has some things to say.
Yeah.
There you go. I think that, show Jesus eating avocados. Be like,
yeah. So what you're saying is, a lot of communities are persuasions.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm working on a book right now, a third course I'm going to release about the 21 things that you need to persuade anybody on about anything. And one of them is understanding how to create social structures which support you towards a certain behavior or a certain goal versus being in communities that detract from that. And we all live in American culture, which means we are smack dab in the middle of a massive 350 million people culture that works against things like keto. So it does not support this.
Will number one in your book be Clubhouse?
I don't know. Clubhouse is kind of fun. I'm a talker, so.
I think that's a community, right? We're using that as persuasion, like this conversation here, which I think is great. And also gives everybody a voice to kind of step up and lead in their own way, and find the people that that they are like-minded with, right? And like you said, whether it's church or the 12-step program for either NA or AA, there seems to be a reason all those communities tend to work.
Yeah, they're powerful for sure. Community is, again, like a collectivized set of pressures and offers, and it's just one of the ways that human beings react well to that environment. And it can work for you or against you. Like if you're hanging out with people that don't eat keto and you're doing that all the time, then that can erode what you're trying to do. Or you try to find. That's one of the things I loved about Paleo. Such a massive, engaged, activated community like Paleo FX here in Austin. God, I love to go down to that thing. There were thousands of people who were all trying to do the same thing, and they were everybody had their own thing going. It was just an amazing community.
And guess what, Dan? That was replicated with KetoCon in that exact same building, in that exact same city, and all the others. But you're right. Like, if you find what has worked, replicate it.
Yeah, you need tactics. You need big strategies. And then you need to boil it down to individual tactics and then see what helps you. If it makes it easy for you to stay on the eating theory that you want, like keto, then amplify it. Get as much of it in there as you can.
For sure.
If you're struggling, then something's not right. You need to make an adjustment.
Yep. Vaughn, thank you for your questions. Triple J, you're on deck.
What's going on, dog?
What's up, buddy?
This morning, Jimmy?
Yep. Yep.
Yes, sir. I was just sitting there thinking, when y'all talking about persuasion, and I was thinking about how when Oprah first come out and supported Weight Watchers, and how they had a massive boost, with Weight Watchers because she came out and supported it.
Yes.
Imagine if she comes out with and says, "I support keto," and she's like, "You get an avocado, you get an avocado, you get an avocado." Man, I'm talking about
So
that would be a massive boost.
Although Dan, you would say because of her past endorsement of Weight Watchers, that kind of like you said about LeBron and the BLM thing, it would be a bit of less effective because of that previous stance, right, Dan?
Yeah, but that's just me sort of nitpicking. Both of those people, those human beings, are still incredibly influential. And if you can get them to support anything that you do, yeah, you win. I mean, anything at all that Oprah endorses is going to have a massive head start. So it'd be great if she's pro avocado.
So Triple J, get on that. You need to make like a sign up sheet or something to petition Oprah to come out in favor of keto. Because Weight Watchers isn't doing so well these days. Go ahead, Triple J.
Sir. That's about it. I just want to say that self-persuasion is very important, because if you don't look within yourself to persuade your own self to do something, it's not going to work, because you got to be persuaded in your mind to do anything. And then I want to say that this community is a great support to give you more strength to keep in your persuasion in your mind, in your self-persuasion, and different support like that. That's all I want to say, Jimmy.
Thank you, Triple J. Appreciate you, man. Autumn, you're up.
Hey, Jimmy, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Good morning, Dan. I just hopped into this conversation, but you sound like a man that speaks my language, and I'm really drawn to it. But I think another way, especially in, I guess, the diet and weight loss community, that we talk about self-persuasion, if that's, what we want to call it, is the know your why. We say that a lot. So know your why. Why are you choosing to eat like this? Why are you choosing this lifestyle and to make this quote unquote sacrifice when, you know, everywhere else in your life, people are eating all willy nilly and doing whatever they want? You have to know your why, meaning you have to know the most powerful persuasion for yourself. What is it going to be that you can use to persuade yourself? And so I think we kind of do that in this community. We just kind of call it something else.
Yeah, and you know, my background is very, in some ways, it's old, it's arcane, it's ancient. It comes from the Greeks. Rhetoric is a very specific way of talking about the world. It's a very formalized study of persuasion. Everybody does persuasion. You know, it's natural in the culture. It's natural to human beings. And industries, like you're talking about in diet and weight loss and health industries, will create their own strategies and their own terminologies for it. And a lot of times they're awesome. The only thing rhetoric has, you know, I think as an advantage is that it studies the entire picture, and it draws from, you know, all those different things to get some sort of global perspective, so it can find the most effective terminologies and approaches. But I do this constantly, where I listen to somebody, you know, who's in a specific industry talking about how they try to persuade or influence or sell, and I'm always fascinated with all the cool terminologies that they come up with and different approaches. So yeah, that sounds great. Know your why.
Autumn, thank you for that question. Anybody else has another question or comment you want to make? Come on up on stage, hit the little hand button down at the bottom, and we will bring you right up. Looks like Dr. John wants to ask you a question, Dan. Dr. John, you're up.
Enjoying it. Thank you, guys.
Hey, man.
I wanted to reiterate what Dan had said earlier about consumer products companies. It's in chemistry. I went to work for one of the largest consumer products companies in the world. And they figure out what drives preference, what drives behavior. And they're not evil. Their job is to make something that's irresistible. And they do GC mass spec, which is gas chromatography coupled with mass spectrometry, to identify the molecules and make sure that they optimize the formula so that when you bite into it, you get that rush of those flavor molecules and you get the right mouth feel and so on. So the products are optimized just to make us want to repurchase it. As soon as you finish one bag of those cookies, you want to rip open the next bag and such. So that's hard to go against. I think you're right. Like I always tell people when they're eating fried food, like I know what happens when you put oil in a fryer later and you cook it for 3 and 4 and 5 days. You make this host of nasty oxidized stuff. And so I won't eat it because I look at the fried food as a sponge that's soaking up a certain amount of poison. So, I used to eat fisherman's platters. I don't do that anymore. I did want to throw out one thing, Jimmy. You did a podcast years ago, and I don't remember if it was you or your guest, but you did the Lipo NMR study every day for like 6 or 8 weeks.
Yep.
And I loved that, and it was such an eye-opener because I didn't realize the time concept was so short, meaning within a matter of a few days, you could your players, and I love that. I think that the way we solve this thing is that every one of these consumer products companies has a brand manager that controls that particular product, and we have to vote with our dollars. And the way that processed food kills you, to me, the two biggest things are it's got way too much fructose. Because fructose is the least expensive way to sweeten something, and that's how you win in a taste test. And they also, when they use fats, they use soybean oil because soybean oil is the cheapest fat. And soybean oil is an omega-6 fat, which is the starting material to make the inflammatory molecules in your body. So I'd love to have people start voting with their wallets. And I don't think you have to convince 100% of the people. You have to convince 3, 5, 8, 10% of the people, and then other people then see it, and at some point there's a flip, meaning it's not a linear transition, it's more like an S-curve. So I just want to throw out those couple of ideas. Love to talk more with you guys. I love what you're doing, and Dan, I think I see people use words and rhetoric all the time to control a discussion, to control an argument. And like when people always talk about, I'll just give you an example. People always talk about giving back. And I have done a lot for the community community over the last 25 years, and I started the Thanksgiving Basket Brigade. But I never called it giving back because that implied that I had been taking when I had started companies and hired people. So I always said, hey, let's help some families in need, or let's help people, or let's lend a hand. I never liked saying giving back because I thought it implied that you were a taker and therefore you needed to give some of it back. But I think rhetoric is incredibly powerful, but it's below the radar for most people. So I'm going to shut up. Thank you guys. I appreciate your room.
Thank you, Dr. John. And I've always said pay it forward. That's what I do because I've been given so much. I think when you've been given a lot, you're expected to give back a lot. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to me. Like, I'm not a science-trained person. And when I got into Paleo, I did it through Rob Wolf. I started listening to the Paleo Solution podcast. And clearly a science guy, super smart guy, and also a great communicator. So he's able to take a lot of that stuff and translate it over into basic communication and flavor it with this sort of, hyper-masculine male, ordinary guy persona. And it just works, like, to bring that kind of science information over into the regular culture like that. I've always really admired Rob's ability to do that. But, like, when you jump in here, Dr. John, start explaining, like the free radicals and, all that kind of, all that good, good science stuff. I know that if I am between you as the rhetorician taking your information out to people, that you've probably eliminated, 85% of the culture just with throwing in some science terms. Even though I understand it because I've been in it for 10 years. I remember when I first started how just massively ignorant and untrained I was.
Yes, me too.
I didn't know what flour was. Like, I remember thinking, it's white, it's powder, what is it? And just learning that it was wheat. I'm like, oh, that's weird. How would wheat look like that? So, like, I remember how completely ignorant I was about all that stuff, and getting people up to speed, at least on the basics of science. Oh my God, that's just a bear of a lot of work.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And a lot of times when I'm speaking, I'm only speaking to 15% of the population, but those are generally the people that are the most receptive and the critical thinkers. My other strategy is to just do it and try to. I'm 61 and I have a 10-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter. I go backpacking up in the mountains with a big pack on for 4 days. I mean, I want to keep doing it because I know it blows people's minds sometimes that I'm 61. And so to me, if I can show people what's possible, then some fraction of the population will select themselves and say, how the bleep are you doing this? And then they can kind of, go along on the journey with me. But yet, I don't see us getting everyone to switch over, instantaneously. I think it's going to be a long journey. Like, everyone didn't quit smoking cigarettes immediately, but over the course of 20 or 30 years, that has flipped to a significant extent. I'm going to be quiet again, but thanks, you guys.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think, human beings learn really well through observation and modeling. We don't learn very well through direct instruction, especially on technical topics. So what you're doing is great. I mean, I'm looking at your picture here, the guy with his shirt off in a nice setting. Like,
how's that for rhetoric?
Say that it's perfect. It's image. It's visual rhetoric. It's great. Especially if you're in your 60s. My God. But I used to always say the vegan movement ends the day that the leadership has to take their shirts off in public.
Yeah, they're scary enough with their shirts on.
Yeah, I mean, let Rob Wolf and Mark
Sisson
take their shirts off, and they're fine.
Yeah.
But so that's great. It's great that you do that.
Dr. John, thank you so much for your contribution. Did you have one more comment?
No, I'm good. Thanks. I wanted to let you guys bring up the next folks, but thank you again, Jermaine. Appreciate it.
Thank you, kind sir.
Dan.
Timon, you're next.
Thank you very much, Jimmy, for letting me in.
Sure.
I just wanted to share my experience and one tip that I discovered
Sure.
on the way of keto, and it all started for me from intermittent fasting, to be honest. And my issue was I was overweight, and I was trying to get more energy because I realized I'm always sleepy during the day, and it's not good. It's not productive. And so I was looking for different intermittent fasting protocols, ideas, but I was always sort of lagged with the problem. I cannot calculate it myself. Like I keep forgetting when I need to eat, or even if it is simple 18:6, it's still sort of, there is a lot of sort of, I needed to have some positive affirmation, when I'm not eating, I need to be sort of cheered about that. I need to be supported. So I started using, and then I actually met the founders, and I even managed to invest in them. And now it's apparently one of the largest intermittent fasting and mindful eating apps on the App Store. It's called
Nice.
Simple. I don't want to advertise, but it changed my life, and I use it still now. So the beauty of it really is not only the clock that sort of helps you to preserve your discipline, but actually AI component of it, because I mean, of course, protocols are obvious for everyone, right? So 16, 18, 20 if you are strong, 20 hours not eating. But then you want your protocol to be adjusted to yourself, right? You want this protocol to be also evolving with you. And by the way, since I started using it, and I'm using it for 2 years now, I have no these sleepy lunchtime issues. And then I started, of course, with mindful eating, and with protocols you start to be more mindful about what and how you eat. So I stopped eating or stopped reading while I'm eating. I stopped watching TV or even checking the news that my family was always doing. My father was always, checking the news while he was eating. Super non-mindful, but you don't think about this unless you have a sort of authority that help you to get from A to B, and then
So thank you, Timon. I think we got the idea. Thank you for that. Dan, it sounds like positive rhetoric and self-persuasion kind of worked for him to get to a point, but he then needed, I guess, to shift?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, here's something I love about rhetoric and persuasion. There's a great scene in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid where a guy is the sheriff is trying to get a posse together. And he's making this big speech to the townspeople about they have to all get together and go after Butch and Sundance, and they're all just kind of standing around, not listening to him. And a guy stands up and starts trying to sell a bicycle to the crowd. And the sheriff's like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, you've gathered a crowd. I might as well do some selling." And it's always fascinating to me, like when you do kind of group things and all the different things that can flow into it. Like, I'm not saying Timon was doing this, but that was essentially a quick ad for an app.
Yes.
Right?
That's why I cut him off.
Yeah, and it's fine. That's what persuasion is. It's everybody's trying to get the things they need. And so when you see things like, media and sort of public events like Clubhouse and stuff like that, it's going to become, the sort of human game of you're trying to put your perspective forward. I'm trying to put my perspective forward.
Yeah.
Like I sell courses about, doing persuasion and self-persuasion. And at some point that's going to be in here. So it's just a fascinating area. It's one of the reasons why it always just interests me.
It was funny. I let him go for a bit. I'm like, all right, he's going to wrap it up. All right, he's going to wrap. For all you that are moderators on Keto for the Soul, watch how I handled that, because I let him go a little too long. You cut him off a lot sooner than I did. Rhonda, help me, please, Rhonda.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Yeah, you were very smooth, both of you, to cut it off, and that's always great. Just another great day today. Woke up full of energy and all of that good stuff. And the self-persuasion is really good for me right now. I'm persuading myself to do the right thing, and my why is my health, my children, my husband. So with the group, I'm loving just hearing positivity, accepting people where they are. I'm in a group right now where, it's not always positive. It's supposed to be an accountability group, and we do different things to encourage each other. But if one person can't do that thing, then it's not where they just freely accept you, for not being able or not wanting to do that one particular thing. And for me, it's exercise right now. I'm not keen on exercising, and I don't know, that pressure, that weight kind of makes me want to leave the group. But there are other people in there that are very positive, so I don't know which way to go with the group, because sometimes it makes me feel bad.
Well, and Rhonda, you missed the front part of our conversation because I know you came in a little bit later in the discussion. Dan doesn't think positive is necessarily the way to go. Dan, you want to expand upon that a little bit for her?
Well, using your individual, focus, Jimmy, I think, like you said, like people need to figure out their own cocktail. It sounds like, you really like positivity, and that's very motivating for you. It keeps you in a psychological space that you prefer. And so, I would even say go harder towards it. Like maybe if the whole group isn't positive enough for you, start your own subgroup in there of the 5 people you found the most positive. And just say this entire group is about total positivity. Like some groups are set up around, calling you to task, or, making sure that, you don't lie to yourself about what you're doing and that kind of stuff. But just pure positivity, if that's powerful for you, create your own group and just tell everybody in it, like, we're just here to be super cool and nice to each other, regardless of whether you're failing or anything else. It's just all positivity. And if that's a super, type of self-persuasion, then just ramp it up.
I appreciate that. And I have thought about trying to create a group. I wouldn't want to take anyone from the current group that I'm in, because the leader probably would not be happy with that. So as I develop people that I know, like my sister is leaning in towards starting keto. I just added another person to Clubhouse because I wanted her to have exposure to all the keto information. So that is true. Thank you for that inspiration to maybe have a smaller group, if it's just 3 of us to start, and it be a positivity group, because that's what I feed off of. That encourages me to go further. I know some people need the pressure, but that just pisses me off. When someone, you're discounting all the great things I do just because I don't do this one thing. I think that's wrong, you know? So,
Rhonda, if you start that group, let me know. I will be happy to be a part of it.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Jimmy. That would be so sweet. I promise not to tax you too much, but I just want to create that little group. So thank you. That is so kind of you.
Thank you, sweetie. Dan?
Yeah, and I want to say, I started this by doing my thing of countering Jimmy, so that we get in and explore things. But I really like positivity. Like, I have all sorts of positivity rules and structures in my life, because I dislike negativity completely. Like, in social media, I allow zero. I'm a zero negative space.
How do you do that?
I just block everybody. Like, anybody says anything even remotely negative,
so
I'm like, out.
Dan, does that mean your mom and maybe your sister are your only 2 followers?
Yeah, people like positivity. Like, I built this as structures in my family.
Yes.
Like, I have all sorts of positivity rules in my family for my kids. Like, they're not allowed. There's no negative talk in my family.
Wow.
Like, if they criticize, that doesn't mean they can't criticize each other or talk about things that they want improved.
Yeah.
But they have to do it in a way that isn't attacking. Like, there's no pejorative, there's no ugly language, there's no teasing, there's no insults. Because I just don't like it.
Yeah.
If it's my house and my family, then I have the opportunity to create a positivity space that still has depth and texture and the ability to communicate and say whatever you want, but you can do it in a positive way that's more fun. I just like it better.
Yeah. Rhonda, thank you for your question. And guys, that is it for this Locating Your Diet Failure Art of Self-Persuasion. Go check out Dr. Dan French, Rhetoric Warriors podcast. And he goes all over the board, kind of diving deep into rhetoric and all the various aspects of it. Go check him out. RhetoricWarriors.com is his website if you want to check out some of his courses. What is it, 25 weeks of courses for $25?
Yeah, and eventually I'll raise it up. I'm starting to do the audio and video versions of these things, but I just like the idea of 25. Like, you get a different lesson each week, and it's $1 a lesson.
Yeah.
I kind of like the way it sounded. So.
Yeah. It's dirt cheap for what you did. So if you liked kind of the mindset stuff, maybe you're kind of stuck with some of this persuading yourself and other people of things, definitely check out the course. Dan was very gracious to let me look at that course, and wow, yeah, it's chock full of stuff. You'll get your money's worth in like the first course alone, the first week alone. It was really amazing, Dan. Good job. But thank you for being here today. And this has been Keto for the Soul. Go to the top of the page, click on the little green Monopoly house up there. I want a red hotel one of these days because, damn it, we need that here. But Keto for the Soul is the name of the group. Go check it out. Go follow us there, you guys, and follow all the great rooms. My role here, I feel like I have a lot of good interviewing skills, so I'm bringing on friends like Dan French to interview. So I've got a few of them coming up here. Go over to my bio and you can see the upcoming interviews. Tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. I've got Lesia talking about how keto is different for women. Then the next day, Ben Azadi talking about the do's and don'ts of keto. On Saturday, I've got the ketogenic pharmacist who's going to talk about ketogenic diets and medications and how they interact with one another. So definitely keep checking out my rooms. Thanks for being here today. And Dan, thank you again for joining me on Clubhouse.
Yep, always fun, Jimmy.
All right, bud. Thank you. And guys, thank you so much. We'll be back again soon. Bye, guys. Bye, Instagram.